Let's return now to international and security matters. Joining me is the Liberal Senator Claire Chandler, who's also the chair of the Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade References Committee. Senator, thanks for your time. I want to play you, first of all, what the Prime Minister said about the Iranian Ambassador's tweet. He's been very critical, called it anti-Semitic. Let's have a look and then I'll get your thoughts.
We have called in the Iranian Ambassador to the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, as is the protocol when something like this happens. I'll make it clear, there's no place for the sort of comments that were made online in social media by the Iranian Ambassador. They're abhorrent and they're hateful, they are anti-Semitic and they have no place.
Let's get Senator Chandler, your thoughts now. And as you heard there, scathing assessment of the words from the Iranian ambassador. What's your read?
Well, I would say two key things in relation to this, Kieran, and the first of which is that this tweeting from the Iranian ambassador shouldn't be used to the government, it shouldn't be used to the Prime Minister, because I've been raising concerns about what the Iranian ambassador has been posting on X since October last year with the Department of Foreign Affairs at Senate estimates and with the Foreign Minister. So the government has been well aware for quite some time about this activity. The other point that I would make is that it's all well and good for the Prime Minister to say that the ambassador has been called into the Department of Foreign Affairs for a dressing down. But again, we know that this is something that has happened more than 15 times over the last couple of years over various concerns that the government has had about the IRI regime's activity and the ambassador's activity here in Australia. Now, I think that is the definition of madness, doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different response. And as we've seen with these most recent tweets from the Iranian ambassador here, clearly purely bringing him into the department to have a chat with him about his behaviour is not doing anything to deter it.
Do you accept, though, that it is important to have a diplomatic dialogue with that country when many of our like-minded nations don't have any comparable diplomatic representation? I absolutely accept what your characterisation of this tweet as. It is appalling and it's hateful, as the Prime Minister put it. Is there an argument, though, that they've got to maintain that dialogue, that it's important not just for Australia, our relations with that country, but also for those that are our allies, Claire Chandler?
I think that is always an important consideration, Kieran, and you'll note that in the report that I tabled on behalf of my Senate committee into Iran back in February last year, we talked about reducing Australia's diplomatic relations with Iran down to the absolute minimum possible to be able to maintain those practical channels. But I think what we have seen since then is this continued behaviour from the Iranian ambassador here and, frankly, from the IRI regime more broadly, that starts to bring into question, well, is merely reducing those relations to the minimum possible the best thing to do? Should we be taking stronger action? And like many of my coalition colleagues have said on your show here today, I think there are serious questions that the government should be considering making the Iranian ambassador persona non grata.
And yes, indeed. Well, we've put that to government representatives and the Prime Minister doesn't seem to be heading in that direction at the moment. Unfortunately, in the region, Iran and Israel on the precipice right now, this is a huge worry, not just for those two nations, but obviously the flow-on effect to countries like Lebanon with Hezbollah and other proxies.
Absolutely. It's incredibly concerning what is happening in the Middle East right now, and particularly on the question of Iran. I have been continually disappointed by the lack of action from the Albanese government when it comes to holding Iran to account. We in the coalition have offered bipartisan support to the government to do whatever they need to list the IRGC as a terrorist organisation. Now, it's the IRGC that is providing support to Hezbollah, that is providing support to Hamas, that provides support to the Houthis. This is the group that the Australian government could list as a terrorist organisation if they want to, and they have continually refused to do so.